Hello plant people, how are you guys doing today? If you're new around here, my name is Ashley and I'm a soil scientist, and on today's video we're going to be talking about how to grow cucamelons in a cold climate. Now this plant is exotic looking, especially when it comes to the fruit side of things. They make nice Instagram photos and just overall they are an eye-catching piece, especially when you harvest them or you have a bowl of cucamelons sitting on the counter. Everyone's eyes are kind of drawn to them and they think, well, what exactly are those? And the taste is actually very, very nice. So think of like a watered down watermelon type taste. Like, you know what watermelon rind tastes like? That's exactly what cucamelons taste like. So not bad, really nice and refreshing, especially on a hot summer day. However, because they are unique, some people may be hesitant to grow them, especially if you are growing in Canada or just in a cold climate in general. So today we're going to talk about start to finish exactly what to expect when you grow cucamelons in Canada or just in a cold climate in general. That being said, be sure to let me know in the comments down below what climate you are in, whether it is a USDA hardiness zone or a Canadian zone. I would love to know. Like I said, just put that down in the comments. It helps me make videos just a little bit better suited towards you guys. But without further ado, let's jump into cucamelons. Cucamelons can be started indoors or they can be sown directly outside. I'm in zone 3 and I actually did a double version. So I did a version that I started indoors 3 weeks before my last frost date, and then I did some that I started outdoors by seed. Now, the ones I started inside have already done their entire life cycle, meaning if you're looking for an earlier harvest or you are looking to beat the heat in hopes of getting some higher yields, then starting them indoors is just fine. The reason why I experimented with starting them indoors before doing this video is because I wasn't confident in how they would transplant. Generally speaking, plants that vine do not transplant very well whatsoever, and this is particularly true for cucumbers, watermelons, pumpkins, squash family. Now, cucamelons aren't actually cucumbers, so they're not related in that sense. However, they have very similar physiology. So I thought to myself, I gotta try to transplant them to make sure that it's possible before telling you to do so. And it is. They actually don't go through much transplant shock wise. And they do very, very well. They don't have to be planted in a peat pot or a biodegradable cup whatsoever. You can just use regular plastic, and their roots tend to do okay when they are disturbed. Now, I did start them outside by seed after my last frost date. And because their grow length is only around the 65-day mark for, you know, the majority of the varieties that we will have access to, they did just fine and they did produce. Now, they do not like heat, but they do like sun. And in Canada this year, especially in Western Canada, we have a little bit of a heat issue. So they enjoyed the sun and they weren't scorched like some of my other plants like nasturtium, kale, my collard greens, lettuce were completely scorched. The leaves are done for the year basically, and it's only about mid-August, I would say beginning of August, they were already on their way out because the sun and the heat is way too intense this year. Now, cucamelons did fine sun-wise, so I didn't get any scorched earth looking leaves. However, they did not enjoy the heat, meaning they did not like the heat. And so when the roots warmed up, we ended up with thinning out of the foliage and kind of a die-off starting at the bottom, going its way up. So I would say the ones I transplanted outdoors started dying off. They're in the same pot, trellising up the same area. Those ones started to die off about 2 weeks ago, and now the ones I planted from seed are slowly starting to work their way out. So with that being said, high heat, high sun intensity, they won't last the entire year, and that's just very natural life cycle, especially when you are just pounding them with tons of heat, tons of sun. So Watering wise, they do like to be relatively moist. They don't enjoy it drying out at all. So if you're seeing wilting and things of that nature, you've probably gone too far, too long without water. So we want to try to avoid that at all costs, because that will actually bring down our yields. With that being said, you can grow them in containers. However, next year, I probably wouldn't grow it in a container in direct heat or in direct sun, especially if the temperatures are still sitting around that 35, 40 degrees Celsius mark next year, because the hot roots definitely did not do well. They can be planted in the ground. Now, the issue with this is that the melons themselves, like the edible fruit, very, very tiny. And that means it can be very easily covered with dirt, leaves, that sort of thing. So we want to try to keep them up off the ground, which is why I did trellis them. I don't see any benefit to letting them sprawl on the ground. I actually think it may do more harm than good. But if you are able to trellis in some way, then it's not only going to be easier to harvest, but it's also going to be easier to control your fruit and how well it does all the way up until maturity. This brings me into pests for cucamelons. So cucamelons have the same pests that any sort of cucumber, melon, pumpkin will have. The biggest one that we are going to experience here in Canada, however, or just in the northern US, is powdery mildew. So yes, these do get powdery mildew. I have an entire video on how to control powdery mildew, but the main takeaway from this is if your cucamelon has powdery mildew, you want to treat it. You want to ensure that the foliage is not composted, because powdery mildew spores will overwinter in that foliage. So you do actually want to discard that and get rid of it. And then maybe even in some cases, if you're using potting soil, treating the top 2 inches of the potting soil with something to help remove those spores, or just simply garbaging that soil, especially if you're noticing it year after year with your vining plants. But overall, these are very simple plants to care for. There is no pruning, there's no hand pollination needed. You don't even really have to deadhead or harvest in a way that is going to help them continue to flower. I mean, you do want to harvest them on a regular basis, because that always does help with the life cycle. But for the most part, in my experience this year anyways, is they flower, they're pollinated, and they kind of all come to maturity at the same time with no new flower formation. So it's kind of start, stop, done. Now that could be from the heat. Some of you may have different experiences with that. Let me know in the comments down below if that is the case. However, that is literally all I have for cucamelons. It is a very satisfying crop to grow. They're cute, they're adorable, they taste good, they're healthy to eat, and they're a conversation piece, because I posted this on Instagram and there were so many comments. Everything you guys asking why your seeds didn't germinate, all the way to what does it taste like, and even a number of you saying that you really, really wanted to grow these. So that's kind of the inspo behind even doing this video in general. Now, with that being said, if your seeds are not germinating, you may want to apply a slight base level of heat. I'm suspecting that they are getting blight, and so the seeds are actually rotting within the peat moss mixture. So simply just add a little bit of heat to the bottom, or ambiently add some heat, and it should cure your germination issues. I personally didn't have any germination issues, and I used the West Coast Seeds packets. They're like the beigey brown kind of packets. It's a Canadian company. Now, I will let you know if I experienced germination issues last year. Don't be discouraged by this. Quite honestly, seeds from all vendors, for whatever reason in 2021, I don't know if it was the potting soil or the seeds or what was happening, but I was noticing very low germination rates this year. And honestly, some years are bad, especially after last year, everyone getting into gardening. Maybe they're running a little low on stock. I'm not entirely sure. But I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments below if you've grown cucamelons, if you liked them, if you didn't, if you like the taste or not. I personally love the taste of them, but I'm also like a fresh fruit nut, so could have something to do with it. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.